Okay. All right. Thanks so much for joining us. My name is Sarah Shoup, and I'm the founder of universityparent.com. And our goal is really to help connect parents with valuable information so that they can best support their student. And I'm really excited because today I am going to interview Afra. He's the founder of the National Association of College Experts, and he does an incredible job at saving parents thousands and thousands of dollars per year on tuition. And when I first spoke with him, I could not believe all the different ways that he's helped families, all over the country be able to really significantly reduce their tuition costs. And he's going to share some of those tips with us today. So, Afra, thanks so much for joining us. Can you tell me a little bit about yourself and how you got into this work?
Thank you, Sarah. So National Association of College Experts was essentially a product child of just talking to friends, family members, and specifically a friend of mine who is essentially a financial planner. And he dealt with a lot of parents and folks who had kids who were going through the process of college. So we sat down and brainstormed and talked about ideas on what we can do to help families that are starting or in this process already, to help them alleviate some of those costs that you see with college.
Got it.
So we set up National Association of College Experts and recruited some of the best minds in the field to come up with a curriculum that will teach families, parents specifically, on what to do to be in the very best position every step of the way in the process. Originally, we had started this as a one-on-one consultation that we did with families. And we realized that we wanted to do this in a bigger way, reach more people, more families. So we took everything we knew and created the DebtFree College program, which is a video course that specifically step-by-step outlines everything you need to know about the process, and more importantly, what to do about it every step of the way.
Mm-hmm. What's one thing that you wish parents knew about paying for college, or what's one thing that really surprises you when you first start talking to families?
What surprises me is, like most families, parents specifically that I talk to, don't have an idea or clue on what has to happen and what has to happen prior to the senior year of the high school student, of their child. So essentially preparing and planning well ahead of their senior year in high school is key. Most parents believe that they just go into their senior year, fill out the FAFSA. If the CSS is required, fill the CSS out as well for that college, and then just wait and see what the college awards them. That's 99.9% of the families out there. So, and there's a substantial piece of the share of families out there that don't even consider filling out the FAFSA or CSS simply because they feel like they make too much money, which is pretty far from the truth. I tell them, even if you're a millionaire and you look like a millionaire on paper, you should still fill out the FAFSA and CSS, simply because you get access to grants and scholarships that a school will provide you on a merit basis, but they will still look at your financial need to provide that merit status to you. So it's really crucial to not only fill out the FAFSA and CSS if it's required by the school. FAFSA is required by all schools. CSS is required by about 400 schools.
So you mentioned that it's really important to fill out the FAFSA regardless of your financial situation. I know there's a lot of services out there that actually will fill out the FAFSA for you. And then a lot of schools are like, never ever pay for something like that. Like, what's your take on those types of services?
That's a great question. So we personally, as a company, do offer filing FAFSA and CSS for our clients. We do that in our one-on-one consultation. Our DebtFree College program is a do-it-yourself, so we teach the family, the parents, and the student how to log into FAFSA or CSS fill out the forms properly. So the mistakes that we see, there's errors that families make when going through the process of filling out a FAFSA form, which tends to be, you can say, more tedious than filling out your taxes. So the same way you would hire a CPA or a tax accountant to do your taxes, we generally recommend to have someone file your FAFSAs or CSS, but it's absolutely not required. It's absolutely free for you to go and file the FAFSA. There's a nominal fee to fill out the CSS through the College Board. And in our do-it-yourself, we teach in our debt-free college program, it's a do-it-yourself that teaches you how to do it yourself. So we feel both, it just depends on the family and what they're more comfortable with doing.
Got it. And I know, FAFSA is confusing, right? Like most people really struggle with it. And you mentioned like you have a CPA prepare your taxes if possible. And I think that's a great analogy. So one thing too, I'm wondering about is, do you have to have your taxes completed before you file the FAFSA for the upcoming year? Like, especially, I know this one's really early. How do you handle that?
Yeah, so this year's FAFSAs, with the new law change, FAFSA opens October 1st. So you can start filing your FAFSA October 1st of 2016 for a fall 2017 student. And the sooner you start, the better. So your taxes are obviously not going to be done for 2016, but with the new law, they're going to consider your 2015 numbers. So the new law now says that they're going to look at 2 years prior. So as a fall 27 student, they're going to look at your 2015 tax returns, which pretty much most people have their 2015 taxes done.
Okay, got it. Thank you. And in terms of filling out the FAFSA, if someone gets stuck, is that a good point to check out your course?
Yeah, so what we recommend is we have the course built into modules, and it takes you step by step. So there's quite a bit that needs to be done before you even get to filing the FAFSA. So as a senior in high school this year, they're going to fill out the FAFSA for the first time October 1st. So what you'd like to do is do a lot of rearranging, if you will, putting your financial ship in order prior to filing the FAFSA. So FAFSA, when it comes to the income, it's pretty set, right? Because they're looking at your 2015 tax returns, and there's not much you can do about that. You can't go back and change those numbers in most cases. However, with your assets, they're going to take a snapshot of your assets when you file your taxes, or excuse me, when you file the FAFSA. So if you're filing the FAFSA October 1st or sometime in October, the day that you file the FAFSA is where they're going to take a snapshot of what your assets look like. So prior to filing, it's key to make all those adjustments to minimize your financial profile, which in return will increase your financial aid eligibility.
Great, thanks. And you mentioned that everyone should fill it out kind of regardless of income because of the opening up for scholarships and grants. Can you tell us a little bit about, like, if someone goes through your course, how much do they typically reduce their cost by?
We're seeing an average of $10,000 per year. So if a student is going to a four-year college, and one of the modules that we actually teach is we try to get the student to graduate in 3 years. So from start to finish in 3 years. The national average is about 6 years. So essentially what we're trying to do is get the school in and out as quick as possible. So that's one financial strategy, because you're saving, several years of cost and what have you. The other is all the financial strategies that we have around financial need and merit and private scholarships. So these all together, we're averaging about $10,000 per year per student.
Wow, that's awesome. I love the strategy too of trying to graduate early and go after a 3-year program rather than a 6-year program. That does make a huge financial impact for families. So one of the other things I was curious about when you say, you have everything broken up into modules, how long does it typically take to go through the course from start to finish?
From start to finish, it's about 3 to 4 hours of video, and there's some attachments as well, like documents, PDFs, and what have you. So what I recommend is to binge watch the whole thing in one go. So you sit down, you open, you log in, you go through the whole thing for 3 to 4 hours, and then come back to the course and reference it based on where you are in the process. So when you do that, it kind of gives you an aerial view of everything, and then you know exactly what you need when you need it, and you can go and reference that specific video or document.
Great. And how long can you keep going back to the course and asking questions or referencing the information?
Yeah, great. So the courses, you have lifetime access to the course. So if you have more than one child who's going to college, then you can apply this for all the kids because it's useful information. So you have lifetime access to the Debt-Free College program. In addition, we found out that we needed to provide some sort of personal help, some sort of support for parents going through this process. So we've set up a community where we have close to 6,000 parents in there now who are going through the process or are beginning to go through the process. So there's parents who are pretty savvy in there who help other parents, and then there's our team in there as well. Myself personally, I'm in there as well, helping parents with questions and what have you. So they get lifetime access to that group as well.
Oh, that's great. It's awesome to be able to ask another parent how they navigated the same situation. And it's a great point too to think about if they have more than one child, they can always use this on the next kid if they didn't start early enough with their first. But speaking of that, you mentioned earlier, it's great to start as soon as you can. But is there a time when it's too late for parents really to start this course?
Ideally, we'd like them to start when their student is between the grades 9th and 11th grade in high school. However, if they're a senior in high school, or if they're even a first year or second year in college, there's still quite a bit of content within the Debt-Free College program that they can take advantage of, and which will essentially help them save money. So the bulk of the material is meant, so a student who's between the grades 9th and 11th is going to take 100% advantage of what the course has to offer. As you get later in years, there's going to be less strategies that they can take advantage of. So the sooner you start, the better.
Great. And in terms of it being, the Debt-Free College program, what about for students that have already taken on debt or parents who've already committed to a student loan? Like, is there content for them too?
Currently, we don't. But we're planning on providing graduates who either with a bachelor's degree or a master's degree, providing them with a content that specifically talks to how they can consolidate their debt and some strategies around that. That's on our to-do list for the near future, hopefully.
Great. And
I would add one thing here is when you get access to the Debt-Free College program, any updates that we do, and we're constantly updating as things change, you still have access to that. So any strategies that will come across our desks, anything that we see that's working with our one-on-one clients, we automatically will provide that within the Debt-Free College program as well.
So I'm curious to learn, it seems like schools come up with how much parents are supposed to pay kind of out of nowhere. Can you talk a little bit about the formula that you share with parents on how to figure out what their expected contribution might be?
Yeah, so I think you're referring to the COA minus EFC equals need, right?
Yeah, and can you talk through just like what does each one of those things mean?
Yeah, absolutely. So the formula is cost of attendance. So that's the total cost to go to that specific school. And then you subtract it by your EFC. So the FAFSA will determine what your EFC is, which stands for expected family contribution. So when you subtract your EFC from the total cost of attendance, you end up with the financial need. The financial need is what schools look at to provide you grants and scholarships and their loan packages. So when you receive the award letters from them, they're trying to cover as much of that need as possible. Now, there's certain universities that will cover 100% of that need. So the key is to find those schools, know which schools they are, but the other strategy is to reduce your EFC. So the more you reduce your EFC, the higher your need becomes.
Wow, so some schools will cover, yeah, that's amazing. So some schools will cover all of the expected need. Do you guys talk through how to find those schools and how to get access to them?
Yeah, absolutely. So the schools that cover 100% need will require the CSS. So they will pry into your financials more to make sure that you actually have that financial need. So with that said, these schools have huge endowments and they're very generous, and they will, in most cases, cover up to 90% of that 100% of need, if that makes sense. So if whatever need you have left over, if a school covers 100% of that need, that coverage includes 90%. For a school can include up to 90% of grants and scholarships, and the other 10% can be loans or jobs like work study or what have you.
Got it. Okay, that's awesome. Okay, and so one question: if someone makes that investment, what's kind of the typical return if they buy the course?
Yeah, great question. So the $199 basically gives you lifetime access to the course and to our support group, where we have about 6,000 parents in there currently. So this is where you get the support you need. If questions come up, clarifications are needed, that's where the support happens. So the $199 investment, typically we're seeing families get about 100 times or more return on investment on that $199. So it's very safe to say saving $10,000 a year is very possible when you know these strategies and you know these methods, and more importantly, you take action and you apply them.
Okay, great, thank you. And I'm curious, our site's really geared for parents, but it's also about helping support your student through this process. So is there a role for students in this process, or is there content that you share with parents about what they should do to help their student?
Absolutely, absolutely. That's a great question. We feel students need to go through the Debt-Free College program as well. So what better thing to do than sit as a family and watch these videos and go through the content together so that you're on the same page throughout the process. Because there's a lot of decisions that really have to be made by the student, with, of course, with the parents' influence. So by going through this curriculum together, it helps to be on the same page. It helps to make decisions quicker and more efficiently.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Can you tell us if someone's interested in checking it out, what's the best place for them to find you?
So the best place for us, for you to find us, is to go to our website, which is, we'll have a link here, I'm sure, National Association collegeexperts.com. And we'll provide links so that you can easily access the site.
One last thing, can you share a story? I know it has to be anonymous, but just about a family that you've helped before?
Yeah, absolutely. We take great pride in hearing the feedback and what have you, and we have a lot of testimonials on our site. So typically, what we see is the first stage with a family is shock, and then relief. So as an example, just a very simple example is today I was talking to a parent who their EFC, their expected family contribution, was way higher than they could afford. And they came to me. This is after their student is attending college already. So he's a first year in college already. So they're paying more than they can afford already. And she came to me to see if there's any way to reduce that EFC. So upon looking at her financial information, her tax returns, and also looking at her FAFSA, we recognized that she had submitted basically what her company puts into a health insurance account, and she had put that as a non-taxable income on the FAFSA. Just a very small mistake, but it was $14,000 a year. So what that caused was her EFC had literally gone up about close to $6,000 a year. So that's $6,000 more a year that she was on the hook for. And over 4 years, that's about $24,000. So just small little things like that add up. And, you know, that's, I'd like to say that's a rare example, but that's pretty ubiquitous. I mean, in what we see, it's happening all the time.
Great, thank you. That's awesome. I know I think that that's a great description at the beginning, just saying that parents feel so, you know, stressed and in shock when they find out the numbers, but that you can really help alleviate a lot of that stress and help them feel relieved. So that's awesome. Is there anything else I should be asking you about the program, or asking you that you think parents would love to know?
Yeah, I mean, something I'd like to share with you is a very simple strategy, but I think it's really key, especially right now with the new law change. So up until this year, the EFC was looked at for the previous year. So if our student is going to be a senior this coming fall, they would look at the 2016 numbers, right? So with the new law, they're looking at 2 years prior, so 2015 numbers. So what that essentially tells us is, like, we have to be prepared 2 years prior, minimum 2 years prior to the student attending college. So the urgency of starting soon now couldn't be clearer. So I want to put an emphasis on that.
Great, thanks. Yeah, especially with the new FAFSA date coming out, that's yeah, super important to get going.
Yeah.
All right, well,
and the CSS has changed as well. So CSS has gone to 2 years prior as well.
Oh, wow.
So the difference between the FAFSA and CSS is FAFSA is required by all schools, and it's the federal methodology for figuring out, calculating your EFC, which colleges take, and then determine how much aid they're going to provide you beyond that EFC. The CSS is an additional form that's required by about 400 colleges and universities, and typically the more generous schools that have the large endowments, that have all the free grants and scholarships, require the CSS. So it's an additional way for them to pry into your finances. So being optimized and being in the right position is key.
Great. Well, thank you so much for joining us today and for sharing a little bit about your program and the course that you've developed. And we'll make sure to have a link at the end of this so that if parents want to learn more about the Debt-Free College program, or students that want to take it themselves, it'll be easy for them to connect to it. So thanks so much.